All right, I'll call this meeting of the Growth Committee to order. Special meeting today, June 9th. So we just have one agenda item today, and it is the St. John Theatre Company funding request recommendation. And we are going to hear a presentation. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Madam Chair, can we just
Yep.
confirm that they are actually able to hear us out on virtual?
Mayor Reardon and Deputy.
Yeah, we're good. All right, I can hear you.
John's there. Okay, great.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will pass this over to Director Phil-Ouellette.
Oh, great. Through you, Chair Killen, to members of the committee, thank you for the introduction. And I'd also like to acknowledge the representatives from the St. John Theatre Company in the audience today as well. Growth Committee has an important recommendation to formalize as it relates to a significant investment into arts and culture in St. John today. As we will see, the Sydney Street Courthouse project would introduce new and additional arts and culture programming offerings in St. John, which would further the city's reputation as the arts and culture destination in Atlantic Canada. I'm not going to go through the project in its overview. We had a great presentation recently from Stephen Tobias and his team, and there is that information in the packet. But there is part of that presentation was a request for $1 million, and today that's what we're tackling. And one thing that I'd like to mention at the start is in these types of application, there is not a template for us to seek. There is not a set criteria in place to say this is a good project, this is a bad project, this project receives X amount, and this project receives Y. So in this situation, what staff has done is developed some criteria to evaluate the merits of this project on the basis of those criteria. It's not rocket science, but it's also something that can guide the decision-making of this committee and eventually to council. So what we sought to do was establish 3 broad categories. One is alignment, the other one is community impact, and the other one is economic impact. On the alignment, I'm just doing the summary here. I'm not going to get into much detail. It's all included in the report. The City Street Courthouse project demonstrates very strong linkages to the city's major strategic plans. And in some cases, the project would directly contribute to desired outcomes from these strategies. And when I'm mentioning that, I'm talking about the Central Peninsula Neighborhood Plan. I'm referring to Plan SJ. I'm referring to council priorities, and there are others identified as well. Sorry, the draft 10-year strategic plan as well. So from staff's perspective, this project could not score much higher from an alignment standpoint in our goals for arts and culture, new urban offerings in the city's commercial core, green construction, and building meaningful employment for the city's creative class. The second category of criteria that we assessed was community impact. And this one is more elusive than perhaps the other two other criteria categories, but nevertheless very important, and very important to this particular council as well within its council priorities. So this project will enhance the city's overall arts and culture landscape, including those employed in the field. It will introduce additional events, educational opportunities, and unique service offerings for St. John, the region, and Atlantic Canada. The St. John Theatre Company, it is of note and is important to acknowledge, the St. John Theatre Company has a track record of supporting marginalized communities through its programming, and the plans presented through the Sydney Street Courthouse project continues with this commitment. From staff's perspective, the introduction of this project will inject new life in the arts and culture community and the overall vibrancy of the city of St. John. As it relates to economic impact, the Sydney Street Courthouse project demonstrates what we would assess as weaker direct financial benefit to the city. mainly due to one of the primary indicators staff would be evaluating is its yield on tax-based return. In this case, there is no yield for municipal tax-based return on this. However, there is the possibility of spin-off, and there is a package that was submitted on behalf of Envision St. John that points to some of those benefits, those economic benefits that are tied to this project. I'm not indicating that there is no economic benefit. That's not at all what staff are proposing here. However, it is more of a modest gains. And with that, including its construction, its attraction, indication that there'd be at its objective to attract 100,000 visitors to the facility annually, its future operations and spin-off. So this project can be expected to contribute to the broader effort of population recruitment and retention and invite spin-off benefit. But the extent to which this project will do so has not been fully defined at this time, and we can't really grasp that fully at this time. So staff's conclusion reviewing these three, and I just gave you a snapshot of each one of those evaluations. There's a little bit more to it than that, but we believe that this project does merit funding from the City of St. John. The city staff have engaged with the St. John Theatre Company over the past weeks and months on this proposal, and did share initially that the request for $1 million seemed very ambitious when considering all the other financial commitments that the City of St. John currently has. For that reason, staff's preliminary recommendation to Growth Committee members earlier in 2022 was to contribute $400,000 to this project. And this $400,000, why it was identified was that there's an available envelope of funding through the discontinuation of Discover St. John that is in a reserve fund that could be used to support this, as well as the outcomes that Discover St. John had at the time, which is to promote tourism, participation in our community, and an overall development of our community in terms of its vibrancy. However, the feedback received from Growth Committee members when staff presented this initial recommendation invited a reconsideration of staff's initial recommendation and a request for a higher investment from the City of St. John. And if I could summarize some of those primary reasons for that from Growth Committee members, really this was a personified the fulfillment of council priorities, the importance of arts and culture investment in our community, and really the potential spin-off benefits associated with this significant investment. So staff, I will be reviewing staff's recommendation shortly, but I did want to make one caution before, in order to avoid the potential of the City of St. John heading down what I would call an unsustainable road of funding for a variety of other community funding on other projects that are before the city. And I bring this up simply by saying that there is some uniqueness about this project that differentiates it from a lot of other projects within the community. And I'd like to point out three of those. First, it's not every project that comes to the City of St. John that have a committed or partially committed, $15, $16 million worth of fundraised funds. This is a significant undertaking on behalf of a community partner to secure external funding, private funding, other levels of government funding for this. That is not a typical situation. The other one, which has already been mentioned, is that the city has a reserve fund from the Discover St. John, the termination of Discover St. John, that is yet to define, and it is available to support investments in the community and the city, and that's available. Lastly, as mentioned in the evaluation, this project could not score much higher on its alignment with council priorities and the fulfillment of our strategy. So in this case, this scores very, very highly on that. And for those reasons, I think it does differentiate this project from a lot of other projects in the community, and affords us that opportunity to make this recommendation today. I'm not going to go into detail of the recommendation, but I'll just give a quick summary. The recommendation is divided into three sections. The first is an investment of the totality of the remaining funds from that Discover St. John termination, which is $418 $100,000. And it's in terms of timing, it's unlocked through a variety of conditions, mainly the approval of the building permit. There are, I think, 7 other criteria identified in the report, including the importance of identifying St. John as a sponsor, finalizing a funding agreement, being able to audit the St. John Theatre Company, among others. So that's the first component. The second component of the recommendation is to contribute a maximum of $100,000 annually, starting as early as 2023, towards the project. So just to keep track, that's a total of $812,000 total investment at the end of this proposal. And this $100,000 would be unlocked upon initiation of construction versus the adoption or the completion of the building permit. Lastly, the last part of the recommendation is basically to identify the need to come back to council with a completed funding agreement in partnership with the St. John Theatre Company that would outline the facets already outlined in the recommendation, among others that would come up in the finalization of that funding agreement. With that, I think I'll pass the floor on to the city manager to make some final comments.
Madam Chair, members of committee, depending on your deliberations, discussions, you may choose to forward your recommendations to council. That is perfectly appropriate for you to do, and it's well within your purview to offer any recommendations to council. However, it is important for us to recognize that in this particular case, because your recommendations have financial commitments to the City of St. John, financial obligations that the City of St. John would have to honor, there needs to be a parallel track initiated if this resolution is approved. And I stress parallel. Your recommendation does not go via Finance Committee. Your recommendation would go straight to council, but because there is a financial commitment, as city manager, I would need to initiate a parallel track where Finance Committee would also examine this and provide their recommendation to council. So that would be a trigger that would happen should the recommendation that is before you today be supported by this committee, and should you desire to forward this to council for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Okay, over to you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to I got a number of questions here. Do I understand that the need for an audit comes because that is connected to the Discover SJ wrap-up fund? Is that one of the obligatory pieces of that fund for unlocking it? Because being here for a year, I've never heard of us auditing other groups besides our own ABCCs. I could be wrong about that, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, through you, Chair Killen, to the member of the committee. This is a standard kind of advice from a financial standpoint to protect our interest. And it would be upon exercising, we could exercise it. The other option would be to be reviewing the pre-existing financial statements of the organization. But in the situation that we might want to have more information, we would put that as a term of a funding agreement to exercise that right if we felt it was necessary.
Okay. And the other thing, City Manager, as far as starting a parallel track with Finance Committee, is that a formal policy that anything that's approved through Growth Committee that has a financial commitment to it must go to Finance Committee?
Not every. Too many microphones. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Harris. Not everything, no. If it's already within the budget, if it's already planned, and you are simply exercising your budgetary approvals, then it does not go to finance at all. So for example, the growth reserve has been designated, allocated, and is available. So decisions of this growth committee to do with the growth reserve would not go to finance. In this particular case, this money that we are now suggesting, both the Discover St. John money, but also the over 4 years, $100,000 per year is a new financial commitment for the city of St. John. That requires a review by Finance Committee and the view of Finance Committee.
Okay, and my last question just goes back. Has the entirety of this agreement that we're reviewing been seen by the theater company at this point in time, or is this the first time they're seeing this?
The St. John Theatre Company received what we do is a customary summary of review of the recommendation prior to submission publication, and they would have been informed of this package when it was published, to the public. So there's been regular communication with the theater company over the last weeks on this. So I think they should be fairly well aware of this recommendation.
And what's been the feeling on that? Are we going to get comment from them? I know Stephen's here with the team, but do we have space for a comment on that?
From my perspective, the committee could certainly request a comment. It would have to, I think we'd have to change the rules and procedures, a temporary amendment to that to access that. I can share with you that I did share the recommendation with Mr. Tobias, provided some feedback. Generally, I think it was positive, the conversation, but he didn't provide any official feedback to me on that. So if, I can't comment any further on it.
Okay. I'll pass for now.
Okay. All right. So potentially we can circle back to that if we still have questions. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go over to the online folks. So I think I saw Mayor Reardon first. So take it away.
Oh, thank you. Actually, Councillor Harris asked the question that I was curious about is, I noticed in the kit it said that as a courtesy, the recommendation and assessment outlined in this report was shared with the leadership of the St. John Theatre Company. I did like that because that way there's no surprises and it gives us an opportunity and them to work together to hammer out an agreeable, I guess, a relatively agreeable outcome prior to, coming forward with it. So I did like that. And and Phil, you answered that question for Brent. So I'm good with it. I would move the recommendation.
All right. Thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? She just moved it.
I second.
Okay. Councillor McKenzie, seconded. All right. But Councillor Lowe.
I got no problem with the money, but if it's going to go to the Finance Committee, like I thought when we had the meeting before where Phil presented, there was an argument, I can remember very clearly, that those people wanted to use our money as a start to a campaign. And we've gone 2 weeks now. So if we're going to bounce this to the Finance Committee, and then send that to council, then the whole object is going to be at least a month when it first came here. So my first question is, why? And secondly, when does the Finance Committee get it? And then when does it go to council? Because we're just prolonging something that's been prolonged already.
Okay. City Manager.
Through you to the councillor. First of all, on the why, in accordance with terms of reference of the various committees, any changes to existing budgets in your budgets or considerations of future budgetary considerations must go to finance. So that's the why. As for the timeline, we are sensitive to the needs of the St. John Theatre Company. I know that Director Willett has been in discussions with them. We still plan on having the approvals or the deliberation of council, I should say, by the mid-July council meeting. We are going to make sure that Finance Committee addresses this prior to the mid-July council meeting so that at the mid-July council meeting, this can be properly discussed and the necessary decisions made.
Could we make the amendment to ask Stephen Tobias if this is all good on your end? Is there a certain amendment procedurally?
Procedurally, what you would need to do is get a motion, a second, and unanimous approval to suspend the procedural bylaw. And at that case, you could ask Mr. Tobias questions.
I'll move it.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Okay. All in favor On the, okay. John, yes? Yay?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yay.
Yay, okay,
So-
great. Sorry, this is my first hybrid. All right, so if I could ask Mr. Stephen Tobias to come to the mic here, and we will ask you, or healing circle maybe. Okay,
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. What can I share with you this morning?
okay. Who wants to go first? Councillor Harris.
Thanks, Steve, for coming. I guess my thought would be, there's a lot of timelines that you've talked to us about. There's a lot of moving pieces, a huge project. And so what's here, the timeline that Councillor Lowe established, is that going to work? Is any of this going to cause a hangup, either through the timeline, the amounts, the terms of reference agreement? That's what I'm curious about.
A few questions there, so I'll try and go through them one at a time. In terms of the timeline proper, I mean, to be honest, our biggest concerns about timelines are more related to the disruptions in the construction industry and the delays in being able to get, you know, if we order steel today, we actually literally have no idea when we'll get it. So the timelines surrounding this arrangement, as laid out here this morning, I think are not problematic for what we're doing at this point. So if that satisfies anyone's concerns there, I think we can work with those timelines. In terms of, you had a question about the audit and things like that. From our perspective, that is something, when we have a major funding agreement with the federal government or the provincial government, that would be a standard clause in place for the protection of the funder if there's any inkling at any point in the future that maybe the money was not used appropriately or the project did not proceed as promised or laid out, then we know going into it that we have to be prepared to disclose and be transparent about what we're doing. So the only thing that's come up today that is any different from what we've heard, but I did get an email this morning, is the idea of visiting Finance Committee, but I can respect the need for that within the procedures of the city.
Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the steel and it being ordered and arriving in 6 months, 10 months, whenever the heck it's coming, right? I thought you wanted to use our money as a start to a financial campaign. And you wanted the city to go first so that you get people. That's what I thought
Yeah.
it was. And you're telling me now you're worried about steel and things like that there? It is nothing.
That's a bigger worry than this, but certainly the idea of launching a campaign in the fall is not problematic to us. And this would be a great help and a great boost to laying the groundwork to make that happen, for sure.
Good.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tobias. I think that satisfies, oh, sorry. Sorry, Deputy
Sure,
Mayor.
Kellen, do you not see my light?
Sorry, John, can you repeat that?
Do you not see my light on there? I've been on for a while.
First hybrid, okay. No, I think we are satisfied as a committee for, thank you so
Okay.
much, Mr. Tobias.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, one more round. Oh, sorry. No, he doesn't. He
Chair
doesn't.
Killen,
Oh,
hello.
hello.
Do you not see my light on there?
No, I'm sorry. Yes, I do. You go ahead.
Well, I guess my question was, did you see the light on? Because I've been on before the mayor wanted to ask her a question.
I'm so sorry.
However, I'm satisfied now that the timeline will be such that it won't affect the project, and that I think it's a great project. And you know, I have no problem with it going to finance at this point, as long as it doesn't affect the timeline. And I'll be supporting it just in case, you know, you don't see me next time around.
Okay, so is there any other questions, comments at this point? Councillor Harris.
I have a question back to staff on this one. It was mentioned that there is no perceived direct financial input to the city on this. Would not a development of this size around King Square not produce tertiary effects around assessments? I mean, we've all been talking about the headquarters, the Irving HQ being under assessed, Percy Wilbur's buildings there. That's going to have I would assume that's going to change some of the business dynamic for him. Do we not have a formula or some sort of dart throw around here on what that's going to do for that surrounding area around assessment increases? Because as a counselor, I would love to have that as part of the scorecard to say, yes, I know that theater companies and these charities, they don't pay the same type of property tax direct to us. So I understand that that's there, but it does have these spillover effects that I'd love to get feedback on.
Your worship, through you, Madam Chair, through you to the councillor. The short answer is no, we don't have any mechanism of doing that. Services New Brunswick does the assessments on all the properties. Intuitively, we know there will be spin-off, intuitively. We know that it will heighten the attractability of the entire region, and therefore eventually property assessments will go up in the entire region. We know that it may encourage another restaurant to open or another business to take hold somewhere. So intuitively, we know there will be spin-off benefits, but unfortunately, the assessment processes used by Services New Brunswick are not prescriptive in such a way where we can say it will equate to X number of dollars or X percent increase. There's just no way of doing that. It's more of, we understand that there will be an economic spin-off.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I just want to make a few comments after our discussion here. I do think this is going to make us the cultural capital of New Brunswick, honestly. And it's, to me, having grown up in theater and always been a big fan of it, and just this person who I feel like is really a low barrier to entry for creatives. And I think having these options for our community is going to be really, really significant in contributing, especially to the long-term success of this industry in St. John. One of the comments I heard yesterday is we look like a little New York. So what if we have a bunch of, theater folks here that can run productions and do, movie sets? Like, I just feel that this is such a great project, and just even thinking about using it as a venue for conferences, events, all these sorts of things. So I'm really a big proponent of this project, and I would really excited to call the vote right now and see what the committee feels. I think it's good. So I will, on the question for this vote, do we all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Unopposed? Okay. The staff recommendation is moved. So now I'll call, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, everyone. I am not on my game today. I will call for the closure of the meeting. Why can't I figure? Motion to adjourn, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Mayor Reardon, Councillor Harris, thank you all for today.